All right. Good morning, everyone. I apologize for that. I had intended to start at 10:30, but it's the weekend and it's your Saturday, and you sometimes you get up later than you intended to get up, and there are things to do around the house, and there are other things that you need to see to and take care of, and then before you know it, time has gone by. So here we are. So I let me make sure this is broadcasting to YouTube. I saw someone comment immediately. Imperator commented, interesting topic. Yeah, I think people are gonna dig this one. Sheed We here is here. What's going on, Sheed? Thank you for stopping through. Um, Let me make sure I can see myself on YouTube. I don't see myself on my own feed. Give me a second here. Okay, so I'm live on my channel. There we are. All right. Let me right here mute myself. All right. All right. So I'm gonna play the intro, guys. Actually, let me share this over on my original channel because it's Elon Musk and because it's Elon Musk and we're talking about Neuralink and those kinds of things. I think some folks over there will be interested in this, and maybe the master teacher will share it, and maybe the algorithm will pick this up since it involves Elon Musk. All right, I'll give it a like over here. I hope you guys are having a good Saturday thus far. All right, let me switch back. All right, guys. So I don't have a super chat over here. Uh, Also, you guys are under no obligation to make a donation of any kind. But if you feel so inclined, I don't have a super chat over here. So my Cash App and PayPal are here, and I don't have a super thanks over here. So if you feel so inclined, those are there. I'll be making this announcement throughout. So I'll see you guys on the other side of the intro, and then we'll talk a little bit about the brain, because as I was thinking about putting this stream together, I was washing the dishes and I was thinking I can read articles on the Neuralink and Elon's company and the chip, but unless you have a feel for how the brain is built, what the lobes are, and how the sections work together, then to me it's meaningless as a scientist. So we're going to talk a little bit about brain function, brain structure and function, and then I'll dive into these three articles. And then I see Professor Black Ops is here. Engineering Cannabis was a little excited in my community chat, in my community tab last night. So if folks want to come up after I read this stuff, then I'll entertain for a little bit before I shut down. So I'll see you on the other side of the intro. And thank you all for being here. Please hit that like button. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76 Entertainment. I'm sorry, that's my other channel. This is Big Discussions 76 Science and Technology. Here we talk about science and technology related topics. So I'm going to do things differently today. I'll do all the newsletter and stuff. I'll do that at the end, and I'm going to try to dive right in. By the way, I was just sending it to myself, my newsletter, and I'm still figuring out how the technology works. It didn't go. It hasn't showed up in either of my Gmail accounts, so I have to troubleshoot that. I see the Scientist Supreme is there in the chat. Thank you for being here, Lioness. Haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're well. Hope you come up if you hang out for this thing here. Nicole can vouch for the fact that whenever you're setting up a new technology, it has to be troubleshooted and it has to be calibrated, and you just don't use it. Everything has to be set up and modified. So anyway, so today's topic, we're going to see what's happening in Elon Musk's neck of the woods. Of course, he's in the news he's always in the news for something, but he appears to have a feud going with the White House, and he was looking at buying Twitter a little while ago, and I think that's been put on hold because he wants to assure that there are no bots in there. So he has his hands in a bunch of different things, but what makes him why we care about who he is because he's a billionaire, and he has several STEM related businesses like SpaceX and Tesla and Neuralink. So he's on the forefront of pushing science and technology forward into the future. And these discussions, I've been hearing these discussions about Neuralink and brain chips and all these different things in passing over the last year. But I thought it would be fun to take a closer look at what these things are and why they're important, because we may look up at some point and see people walking around with chips on the sides of their head, and we might be seeing people enhanced and people with certain disease states able to overcome those disease states because of chips in their heads, and people operating their cell phones and operating devices just by thinking about them. So I thought this would be a fun discussion to have, just to know where things are going. If you have individuals or young people in your circle who have an aptitude for these things, you might want to pass this on, or actually it would be helpful to pass this on, and you might be able to talk to them about what this is. If you have a few investment dollars hanging around and you see that the Neuralink chip is actually in production and it's actually ready for use in the general public, you might want to throw that money in there. YouTube, this is for teaching. This is for teaching and educational purposes only. I'm not telling people what to do, but I'm just saying that this is important on numerous levels, if nothing else, for general knowledge. So without further ado, keep my respiratory passage hydrated. Most of you know I was battling a head cold last week. It wasn't the C19, but once you have a head cold, you're still a little congested. Your throat can get dry. So I'm gonna have to make sure I stay hydrated during this talk. All right. So Neuralink, Elon Musk, what does this all matter? And what do you need to know? What do we need to know to understand this and make sense of this? And guys, the other thing I thought about is that the other reason this channel is cool is that it's forcing me to kind of stay up on everything, and it forces me to know what's going on, and it forces me to relearn some of the things that I learned years ago. Okay, so let's have a quick just review of the regions of the brain, structure and function. So let's start with this one. This one has lots of colors, and it's very understandable to the general public. Okay, so the brain. This is a sideways look at the brain. So you have your frontal lobe, your temporal lobe, your parietal lobe, your occipital lobe, your brainstem, and your cerebellum. And as you can see, there are functions associated with each region of the brain. And let me take this picture down and say this. In my education, uh, uh, for my bachelor's in general biology and then for my PhD in pharmacology, we certain parts of those curricula were dedicated to neuroscience and the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So I'm going to put a disclaimer out there that I am not an expert. There are whole, Nicole can vouch for this, there are whole research labs and textbooks and societies that deal with just this. So I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert on this. I know some things. I have to relearn some things. And I'm sure science has advanced beyond what I learned in graduate school years ago. So this is just kind of a little high level review. So now that that's out of the way, because some neuroscientists might look at this and say, wait a minute, he didn't mention this, he didn't mention this, he didn't mention this. So um so let's go back to our cartoon here. So certain functions are associated with specific regions of the brain. So for the frontal lobe, that's associated with motor control, problem solving, speech production. The temporal lobe, that's associated with auditory processing, language comprehension, memory slash information retrieval. The parietal lobe is associated with touch, body orientation, and sensory discrimination. The occipital lobe is associated with sight, visual reception, and visual interpretation. The cerebellum, that's associated with balance and coordination, and the brainstem is associated with involuntary responses. So, as you might be able to surmise, if there's some sort of damage or misfunction to any regions of those, any part, any of those regions, you're gonna experience a um, a corresponding alteration of function, which is why when someone's in a traffic accident or they sustain some sort of head trauma, like in the NFL, I was just watching, me and my plus one were just watching the concussion movie with Will Smith. Whenever there's some sort of trauma to any regions of your brain, there's going to be an associated alteration of function. Folks are commenting here. Chaos Rain says, you're down to getting the Neuralink at Nicole Ali and Dr. Dunbar. Linus, what do you think? At this point, no, I don't. I'm the thought of someone putting a microchip in my brain is a little bit unsettling. But what do you think, Nicole? Okay, so that gives you a feel for structure and function. This is another cartoon showing the lobes of the brain. This is more of a cross section showing the cerebellum, the occipital lobe, the temporal lobe, the parietal lobe, the frontal lobe, the thalamus, and the pituitary gland. In terms of the pituitary gland, now we're getting into what we call endocrinology, so hormonal function as it relates to your development and metabolism and homeostasis. So with that pituitary gland, if I recall correctly, that releases thyroid stimulating hormone that drops into your bloodstream and goes to your thyroid gland, and your thyroid gland releases uh, T4 and T3, and those do a number of things throughout the body. But the important thing to understand is that the brain, while it's involved in um, voluntary and involuntary responses, while it holds our consciousness, while it holds our memories, it's also involved in um, our endocrine system. And if that goes askew for whatever reason, then you'll see abnormalities in your metabolism and homeostasis and development. So I'm going to show another cartoon here before I move on to these articles. The hippocampus. Leading up to this stream, I was thinking about the hippocampus, and I thought it was something that I needed to touch upon. And my memory, it's not in my memory right now, so let me do a quick search, unless Nicole gives it to us first. Hippocampus function. I'm certain Nicole gave it to us in the time it took me to type this out. So the hippocampus is a complex brain structure embedded deep into the temporal lobe. It has a major role in learning and memory. It is a plastic and vulnerable structure that gets damaged by a variety of stimuli. Studies have shown that it also gets affected in a variety of neurological and psychiatric disorders. Okay, so that's the hippocampus. And then finally, I'm going to show the structure of a neuron, because if you haven't learned anything from me, or if you don't learn anything from me, the brain, well, no, our bodies have very specific cell types depending upon the tissue. So, and they have unique attributes and functions. So the liver is composed of hepatocytes. The kidney, I created content on the kidney that's composed of nephrons, and even within the nephron, there are specific cell types depending upon the region of the nephron. Fat cells, those are adipocytes. Our muscle tissue, those are our myocytes, and they're type 1 and type 2 myofibers. So your body has very specialized cells depending upon the tissue and the function, and the brain does as well. So the very, very basic cell of the brain is the neuron. And it's an unusual cell in that it has a cell body, and then it has this long process called an axon, with an axon terminal and a node of Ranvier, and oligodendrocytes and a myelin sheath. So it's a very, very complex cell type. And if I recall correctly, one of the mysteries and quagmires of neurons is that once they're damaged, they don't reproduce readily. And that's especially important for when you have nerve damage. So I'm just saying this to say that the brain is made up of very, very specific cell types with very, very specific functions. It's a very complex organ. It dictates all of our bodily functions. It holds our consciousness. Our consciousness is, and I don't think that's even understood right now, how that works. But it's a very, very complex organ. It can't go without oxygen for a certain amount of time. Beyond a critical amount of time, it can't be starved of oxygen without long-term ramifications. And I think that will wrap up this little quote-unquote intro. So I have 3 articles here. They're all short. I see you all are active in the chat, so I am going to dive right in. This first article, again, we're all learning here. I'm learning. You all are learning. Nicole probably knows all this cold turkey. So this first article is a few months old, but I think it's a nice place to jump in. Again, this is where technology and health are going. And a lot of people are concerned with this. A lot of people are concerned with the fact that, for example, young people today are very reliant on technology, and young people today are very, very engrossed in technology, and they don't function the way humans used to, and they don't communicate the way humans used to. And so there's a developmental and evolutionary process going on. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole. I was reading about this. I think this is what Nameless has been talking about all these years and months with regards to transhumanism. YouTube, this is just for educational purposes only. So the first article is from the Guardian. Okay, Elon Musk's. There it is. When you have multiple tabs open, it's hard to see which one you should be reading from. So this reads Elon Musk's, and this is a few months old, but this was a nice place for us to jump in. Elon Musk's brain chip firm Neuralink lines up clinical trials in humans. Implants that Musk says could allow paralyzed people to walk, already tested on a macaque and a pig. For those of you who don't know, a macaque is a species of monkey. It's a primate. And there's Elon right there. The billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk's brain chip startup is preparing to launch clinical trials in humans. So everyone, for those of you who've been following me here, you've heard me say regulatory science. This is the intersection of private industry with the regulatory sector, because this would be considered a medical device. And so this is going to have to go through some level of federal approval, just like the immunizations for the contagion that gripped the world for the last 2 years, which we are arguably not done with. I wrote a blog post on the regulatory sciences. This was written for a general audience. I'm going to drop it in the chat right now. If you don't know what regulatory science is, the link is right there. But basically, there are teams of scientists on the federal level at the FDA who have to vet these products and approve these products and make sure that they're safe for human use. And this is going to be a big one. Musk, who co-founded Neuralink in 2016, has promised that the technology will enable someone with paralysis to use a smartphone with their mind faster than someone using thumbs. The Silicon Valley company, which has already successfully implanted artificial intelligence microchips in the brains of a macaque monkey named Pager and a pig named Gertrude, is now recruiting for a clinical trial director to run tests of the technology in humans. So there's a video there of the macaque. I'm not going to play that because I don't want a strike or anything, but the link is below in the description box in case you want to click on that and watch it yourself. As the clinical trial director, you'll work closely with some of the most innovative doctors and top engineers, as well as working with Neuralink's first clinical trial participants. The advert for the role in Fremont, California says, you will lead and help build the team responsible for enabling Neuralink's clinical research activities and developing the regulatory interactions that come with a fast-paced and ever-evolving environment. So for the non-scientists out there, that's what a position description at a biotech company looks like. And I could tell, Nicole, you might laugh at this, that person, whoever that is, they are going to work a lot. Sleepless nights, they're going to be getting alerts on their phone. They're probably going to be thinking about this project in their sleep. So that person, but the person's going to be well compensated as well. Musk, the world's richest person with an estimated $256 billion fortune, said last month he was cautiously optimistic that the implants could allow tetraplegic people to walk. So think about what I just said about whenever a region of the brain is damaged, there's going to be a corresponding alteration in function. We hope to have this in our first humans, which will be people that have severe spinal cord injuries like tetraplegics, quadriplegics next year, pending FDA approval. He told the Wall Street Journal's CEO Council Summit, I think we have a chance with Neuralink to restore full body functionality to someone who has a spinal cord injury. Neuralink's working well in monkeys, and we're actually doing just a lot of testing and just confirming that it's very safe and reliable, and the Neuralink device can be removed safely. However, Musk has a history of over promising about the speed of the company's development. In 2019, he predicted that the device would be implanted in humans and into a human skull by 2020. Musk said the device would be implanted flush with skull and charges wirelessly, so you look and feel totally normal. He said people should think of the technology as similar to replacing faulty/missing neurons with circuits. Progress will accelerate when we have devices in humans. Parentheses, hard to have nuanced conversations with monkeys. Next year, he said. Neuralink has previously released a video of a monkey that had been implanted with a chip playing a video game, Pong, using only its mind. The company, which counts Google's parent company Alphabet among a series of well-known Silicon Valley backers, is also recruiting for a clinical trial coordinator to help build a team of people to run the trial and liaise with regulators. So to talk with the regulators. Applicants are told they have the opportunity to change the world and work with some of the smartest and the most talented experts from different fields. Again, there's a picture of the monkey. I'm not going to play this, but the link is below in case you want to watch it yourself. Again, I'm sure Nicole can vouch that that person is going to work a lot. All right. We're still broadcasting to YouTube, so YouTube has not found this inappropriate, and they have not found this to conflict with any type of community guideline. Once again, everyone, my Cash App and PayPal are here. If anyone wants to make a donation to the channel, 50 cents, $1, whatever. But I know we're in hard economic times, so folks might not have currency to donate. Okay, so let's move to article number 2. This one is more of a gauging of public perception and public response to this technology, and whether people will be willing to get this or implanted in their minds. So this is another short one. This is more of a survey, but I think it's interesting in terms of gauging how the public feels about this. Okay, give me a second here. Okay. Brain chips, brain chips, brain chips. There it is. This one is from Fortune, and it's entitled, Most people say they're cool with having chips implanted in their brains, but only if they can turn them off. So, Chaos, if you're still out there, this gets to your question. And Chaos, also tell us if you'd be willing to have a brain chip inserted into your brain. You asked me and Nicole about that, but what do you think if you're still there? Six out of 10 Americans would consider having a computer chip surgically implanted into their brains if they could turn the technology on or off. That's according to a survey released on Thursday by the Pew Research Center that analyzed the public's view of cutting edge technologies, including brain computing, artificial intelligence, and self driving cars. One of the takeaways from the survey of 10,260 US adults was that Americans tend to view technology more favorably if they feel they have autonomy and control. For instance, 78% of respondents said they oppose brain chips for improving their cognitive abilities, but when given the option of but when given the option to disengage the brain chip's effects, 59% of respondents said the technology is more acceptable. This speaks to control, said Alec Tyson, Associate Director of Research at Pew Research Center. If I can control this technology, then I'm more open to it. Interest in brain computing has risen over the years due to Tesla founder Elon Musk's Neuralink startup, which aims to conduct a clinical trial of its brain chip technology later this year. Musk has previously claimed that Neuralink's technology could eventually be used to augment humans, potentially enabling people to store and replay their memories like watching videos on a computer. However, multiple brain computing experts have previously told Fortune that the technology is decades away from such superhuman feats, if ever. Additionally, brain chips, primarily used in clinical trials to help restore functions and sensations in people who have severe paralysis, can't be turned off like they are smartphones. The tiny computer chips are medical devices that must be surgically grafted into the brain where they can potentially remain for years, similar to heart pacemakers. About 83% of Americans said that they believe that the testing of brain chips in humans should meet higher standards than testing of current medical devices, underscoring the public's fear of the technology's safety. Also, 80% of respondents said that there should be higher standards for testing driverless cars compared to testing conventional ones. Americans are cautious about driverless vehicles, with 44% saying that the widespread use of autonomous cars is a bad idea versus 26% who believe it's a good idea, while 29% were not sure. But the survey said that 7 in 10 Americans would more readily accept self-driving cars if the vehicles had a visible marking or feature to identify them to human drivers who are also on the road. Additionally, 67% of Americans said self-driving cars would be more acceptable if the vehicles used dedicated lanes, the survey said. Ultimately, Americans' opinions on self-driving cars and other kinds of AI-powered technology haven't changed much over the years, noted Monica Anderson, a Pew Research Center Associate Director of Research. Monica Anderson, although Pew Research cannot directly compare the latest survey with older surveys of the public's attitude toward technology, generally speaking, most Americans' feelings towards driverless cars and AI have not changed. Americans are still wary about driverless cars and are primarily concerned that AI will obliterate jobs just as they were 5 years ago. What has changed is the public's perception of tech companies, Anderson explained, although the survey didn't mention tech giants like Google, parent Alphabet, or Facebook, parent Meta. Some questions related to the use of AI by social media companies indirectly implicated the companies. Okay, this is just about done. For instance, 57% of respondents opposed social media services using facial recognition software to identify people in photos, indicating fears of corporate surveillance. And 86% of Republican respondents believe social media firms are censoring political viewpoints when they use AI to discover and remove misinformation. There is more negatively, there is some negative, I'm sorry, there is some negatively when it comes to algorithms, when it comes to how these companies are using technology, Anderson said. Okay, so that started with perceptions of the brain chips, but then it turned into a survey about Americans' overall feelings about technology, driverless cars, and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. I know engineering cannabis. I know that was just pushing your buttons right there. The last part of that article. Okay, I have one more, and then I'll drop the link if folks want to come up and um, give their 2 cents about any of this. Thank you to all of you who are hanging out for this. Science topics aren't always the most saucy. I've been using that term saucy quite a bit. Um, so uh, this is for a specific group, but I appreciate those of you who are hanging out here. I see a bunch of new folks coming in. Please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. This last one, we're going to go back into Elon Musk's neck of the woods. And he made another claim about what his Neuralink brain chip can do. And you know what? If you, Nicole says saucy. Nicole, you know what I'm talking about. Celebrity gossip, gender war stuff, Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. Those things are popular. People like to be entertained. So this is for a special group here. Okay. And before I read this, if you follow Elon when it comes to his innovations and his technologies, he's very there's a tendency to oversell, and there's a tendency to be very, very enthusiastic and optimistic about when these things are going to roll out. But I mean, he's very confident, he's very cocky, but he has to do that. That's part of being a CEO. That's part of being the face and the spokesperson of of companies like this. You have to be very. We're gonna send reusable rockets up into space. We're gonna put our electrical cars on the road. We're gonna get this Neuralink out there. So he's very, very bullish, very, very confident, very, very optimistic. So he has to do that. But I think that's part of his personality too. He's very, very confident, very cocky. Okay, last one, and then I'll stop reading. Elon Musk claims his Neuralink brain chip could cure tinnitus in 5 years, but don't hold your breath. So I don't know if you remember, I'm a 70s baby. So I remember commercials about tinnitus, and that the way it was depicted in those commercials was that there's some sort of um, damage to your auditory system. I believe that's your hearing, your auditory, your ability to hear, and there's a constant ringing in the brain. So I'm going to show this cartoon once more for those of you who like to see visuals. Once again, there are regions of the brain and there are functions associated with those regions. And so whenever there's damage to one of the regions, you're going to get damage. You're going to get altered function. So It seems as though wherever that damage is, that's probably where the chip would go, but don't quote me on that. I'm just hypothesizing here. The human brain is said to be the most complex biological structure ever to have existed, and a lot of folks consider the brain to be its own computer. And when you think about it, the brain actually is, yeah, it's a computer. It holds memories, it holds functions, it holds um, programs. You could say programs. So our brain is yeah, our brains are like organic computers. And while science doesn't fully understand the brain yet, researchers in the expanding field of neuroscience have been making progress. Neuroscientists have made substantial inroads towards mapping the complex functions of the brain's 85 billion or so neurons and the 100 trillion connections between them. To put this astronomical number into perspective, there are upwards of 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Enter Neuralink, a Silicon Valley startup backed by Elon Musk that has developed a neuroprosthetic device known as a brain computer interface. Among other things, Musk claims this chip could cure tinnitus, the neurological condition that causes ringing in your ears within 5 years. But is this possible? There's a tweet here. Once again, Elon is giving a optimistic prediction of this innovation. Elon, Neuralink will definitely cure tinnitus. Future devices will include 100,000, I'm sorry, 10,000 to 100,000 plus electrodes. Elon Musk tweeted, definitely might be less than 5 years away, as current version Neuralinks are semi-generalized neural read/write devices with roughly 1,000 electrodes, and tinnitus probably needs less than 1,000. Future generation Neuralinks will increase electrode counts by many orders of magnitude. That was on April 24th, 2022. And he's a very, very active tweeter on numerous topics. What is Neuralink? The coin-sized Neuralink device called a link is implanted flush with the skull by a precision surgical robot. The robot connects 1,000 miniature threads from the link to certain neurons. Each thread is a quarter the diameter of a human hair. Wow. The device connects to an external computer by Bluetooth for continuous communication back and forth. In future, Neuralink prosthesis might help people with various kinds of neurological disorders where there is a disconnect or malfunction between the brain and the nerves that serve the body. Uh, that includes people with paraplegia, quadriplegia, Parkinson's disease, and epilepsy. Since its establishment in 2016, Neuralink has been recruiting top class neuroscientists from academia and the broader research community to develop the technology to treat these conditions. Neuralink's monkey can play Pong with its mind. In April 2021, the computer released a remarkable proof of concept video. It showed a 9-year-old macaque monkey called Pager successfully playing a game of Pong with his mind by having an implanted Neuralink device connected to a computer running the game. Looks like an Atari game. Pager was known to play. Pager was shown how to play Pong using a joystick. When he made a correct move, he'd receive a sip of banana smoothie. As he played, the Neuralink implant recorded the patterns of electrical activity in his brain. This identified which neurons controlled which movements. When the joystick was disconnected, Pager was able to play the game and win using only his mind. So there is a tweet of the macaque. Again, that was in a link that I just shared. That link is below. I'm not going to play it here because I don't want to copyright claim or a strike. But there's Pager there. Human trials to further develop the Neuralink prototype are expected to commence towards the end of 2022, contingent on the United States Food and Drug Administration FDA approval. So once again, everyone, there's regulatory. If you're unfamiliar with regulatory affairs, I wrote this blog post years ago. I work right now in a certain part of regulatory affairs, but my eyes are looking around for something else. Basically, in theory, the government serves as a layer of protection for the general population against the private sector. So the government's job is to vet these medications and devices, to kick the tires, cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and to make sure these things are safe before they start being sold and administered to us. That's regulatory. Musk's tinnitus claims. Elon Musk has claimed that the Neuralink device could cure tinnitus by 2027. Tinnitus is a neurological condition that manifests as a ringing or buzzing in the ears in the absence of an external source. Tinnitus is a common problem caused when the nerve that connects the inner ear with the brain, known as the vestibulocochlear nerve, is damaged due to prolonged loud noises, injury, or deficiencies in blood supply. There's Elon right there, and is looking like a high value man in his suit. A cure for tinnitus has proven elusive. Treatment currently centers on masking the sound or learning to ignore it. At present, the Neuralink prosthesis connects to the cerebral cortex. I'll show that cartoon again before I drop the link. The surface layer of the brain. This is where the device can remedy damage to the brain's ability to process motor sensory input or output. Are Musk's claims credible? These claims might appear grandiose, yet the underlying science is not controversial. Neural implants have been helping people since the early 1960s, when the first cochlear implant was placed in a person with impaired hearing. There has been much progress in the 60 years since then. I'm almost done here. Neuroscientists are broadly optimistic the device has potential to treat tinnitus. It may also be useful in treating obsessive compulsive disorder, repairing brain injuries, and treat conditions such as autism or degenerative diseases of the nervous system using deep brain stimulation. I'm going to come back to that. As Paul, I don't know how to pronounce this, Nwayu Jukian, director of the Brain Interfacing Laboratory at Stanford University, observes, we are on the cusp of a complete paradigm shift. This type of technology has the potential to transform our treatments, not just for stroke, paralysis, and motor degenerative disease, but also for pretty much every other type of brain disease. What do we need to be cautious of? The FDA categorizes Neuralink as a class 3 medical device, the riskiest category. Before human trials start, Neuralink must successfully clear the rigorous FDA regulatory controls. To be approved, the company must provide exhaustive clinical trial data from non-human test subjects, such as Pager the monkey, to conservatively justify moving to the next phase. Some monkeys have died during Neuralink's tests, and critics have raised animal welfare concerns. The approvals process for human testing could take some time. The regulators will be looking for unintended negative consequences of the device, such as depression. Also of interest will be how practical it is to remove or repair a device should it malfunction, and how to manage the risk of brain injury or infection. And finally, once FDA approved, Neuralink will enlist human volunteers and the next round of trials will proceed. How long will it take to how long will it take how long it will be until the device is commercially available and how much it will cost is anyone's guess. It could be years, and with a price tag that puts it out of reach for all but the wealthy. So it's wise to not hold out false hope for an affordable implant in the short term. Yeah, it's going to be expensive in the short term once it finally rolls out. So that's it, guys. Those are the three pieces. I'm going to drop the link in case anyone wants to come up and say something. Nicole is there. Engineering Cannabis is there. Before I do that, I just want to. So, all of my content interconnects. So, most of you know I'm writing a book. I've generated content on that book. One of the main characters in the book was my high school basketball coach, the late Dr. Kenneth Leon Jones. He developed, I'm going to show this cartoon of the brain here. Coach Jones, before he died, he developed Parkinson's disease, like Muhammad Ali or Michael J. Fox. But he was able to beat it for a while because he used deep brain stimulation. So for deep brain stimulation, at least the device that he had, there are electrodes that go into the center of the brain. So when Parkinson's disease sets in, the region of the brain that's affected, I believe, is the see, this is not a cross section. It shows you the outside, but there are regions of the brain, going back to endocrinology, where the signaling is controlled by the release of specific hormones. And in Parkinson's disease, the neurons that are involved in dopamine signaling, those are impacted and those degenerate. So the deep brain stimulation, the electrodes go into those regions of the brain and they stimulate those neurons. So he was able to beat it for a number of years using deep brain stimulation. So that's already online. And I just wanted to say that what I didn't cover before, that again, brain signaling is very, very complex. It's very, very complex. So certain parts of the brain and the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system function and talk by the electrical impulses and the release of neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, for example, or GABA, and other parts involve the release of hormones such as dopamine and serotonin. So it's a very, very complex organ with multiple properties and different parts. And I could probably do videos and streams just on brain function. And it might be fun for me to have a neuroscientist come up here and talk to us about this, since I am not a neuroscientist. Anyway, here's the link. If anyone wants to come up and say something or add to what I've talked about, or if I've missed anything, the link is here. We're just about at an hour, but I'll let this go for a little bit. But I do need to get out and go to the gym and get my dopamine and my neurotransmitters going. So for health, it's not healthy to sit in front of a computer all day talking. Professor Black Ops is the first one in. Hey, Professor Black Ops, what's going on? Eddie, did you see my trailer? I used a clip of us talking in my trailer.
I missed that. I need to go check your
Oh,
trailer
it's
out.
right there in the library. It's about 2 minutes long, but just a
Okay.
clip of us because I wanted to show interaction between myself and other scientific minds. What's going on?
I appreciate that. I'll just put my 2 cents on it. I kind of did the same video, just talking a little bit about from a cybersecurity perspective. Because I put in the chat, there's a number of medical devices that have been hacked using the same Bluetooth technology that Neuralink's going to do. Heart monitors been hacked, insulin pumps been hacked, right? So that's definitely some. I'm sure Elon's going to take care of from a cybersecurity perspective because you don't want anybody hacking something that's in your brain. Right? So,
Okay, so hey, the scientist supreme, Nicole. You know what? You got yours on. Let me put mine on. Shoot,
she's
put
safe.
mine on. My face covering. Let me stop.
Now, the other thing in there, like you talked about the BCI, the brain function is.
Yeah.
I talked about it from, they're going to do a military application of that. Because if you can hook that to a military visor, your brain's going to move quicker than actually your reflexes, right? So I kind of moved on in that to a military function.
Dude, I didn't even think about that. What if we're looking at the beginning of like super soldiers?
Oh yeah, I did like 4. I'm looking at my 4 slides. That was huge. I think Japan and China's already working on that because they don't have to do any regulatory stuff over there. So I think that's going to be the next thing they slide in from a cybersecurity perspective and technology. Because if your mind's moving faster than your reflexes, right? So that was my 2 cents. I love when you do these scientific things. So I always try to do my cybersecurity from a different perspective on this list. A couple things I had on it from a neural perspective.
Okay. Well, let's see what the scientist supreme has to say. It's always an honor when she comes through. Nicole, thank you for the Cash App. If anyone else wants to donate to the channel,
no problem.
I'll copy the information here. But Nicole, what say you?
Hi, I'm literally at work. I've been here since 7, but
so we see.
Yeah. So first of all, excellent work that you do, not just today, obviously, but all the time. Number one, because it's true science and technology, and that's something that we need more discussions about for us, for Black people. So in general, because a lot of these concepts will affect us eventually. So I thank you for that. And I'm not sure I can't. It's kind of Professor Black Ops, how you doing? But thank you for having me up. Yeah, I did a couple of videos, I think, on Neuralink. It was originally called Neuralace because of the mesh material that they were going to use. And mesh material, I think, was developed primarily by Department of Defense, a few projects they had in DARPA. And so then they had some trouble with that, obviously, because of the models they were using. The animal models were not as efficient to get good results that they could reproduce over and over, right? So meaning that if they started an experiment in one lab, they couldn't reproduce that result in another lab at the facilities. So that was an issue. But the fact that Elon Musk is trying to bring this to fruition it's not all on him. Like, he can say what he wants because he's not a scientist and he's not in the field of neurology or even disease pathology. That's not his field. So he can say anything. He can market it however he wants. In fact, as a marketing agent that he is, pretty much marketing genius, he's supposed to say that. Like you said, that's his job. He's supposed to market these things and bring it to fruition and bring it to people's attention. I would think that people would be more likely to read about, like, I put a couple of links in the chat earlier of actual studies where they have used nanochips, nanoparticles.
Yeah.
Number one, they've used nanoparticles and nanochips to track down and destroy cancer cells. And that's been done for the past 15, 20 years. But they're now using nanochips to target certain proteins and certain cells within the brain that contribute to Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. So that's important because not only does it speak to specific diseases of the brain, but it speaks to something that is going to become more popular to talk about in science, which is aging. Because there aren't any young people with Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. So then if Damus was here, he would bring up the ethics and the morals of that, because you will be more than likely doing research on older animals, and then later on, older people. So yeah, I think it's an excellent discussion because you're talking about the brain. You're talking about the central nervous system. Their endocrinology is there, of course, as you stated, the hormones, and how all these different systems interact, with brain function and nerve function. So yeah, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful presentation as always that you give.
You know what? Thank you, Nicole. And I want to say to everyone, I kind of hop around a little bit on these topics, and I'm in some ways I'm late to this party. So Nicole created content on this. Go check out her channel. Professor Black Ops said he created some content on this. Go check out his channel. I'm not an authority on this. I'm just getting in where I fit in, and just when the spirit hits me, I say, okay, let's talk about this. So thank you, Nicole. But she has a breadth of knowledge and expertise that are unique to her that I don't know. So if you haven't subbed Nicole, go ahead and sub Nicole.
Is there some music?
That's not me.
Is that from me? I don't know.
It's from somebody.
I don't know.
Probably me. It's probably me. Okay.
Welcome, Engineer Cannabis.
Nicole is right in terms of the Neuralink is basically considered obsolete because the Department of Defense and Bechtel are actually designing nanoparticles to basically go in the brain and basically collect data. Basically, the Neuralink, it's really considered obsolete if you read some of the articles, because again, the reason it's obsolete because again, it's an AI-driven system, meaning from installation to observation. It's an AI-driven system, and one of the biggest problem with it is if you have humans installing it, it might cause problems in terms of scarring in the brain or injury, which might even cause more issues. So Bechtel and DoD decided to move against it because there was too much risk in it. And they decided to use nanoparticles, which is basically less invasive than Neuralink itself. So the DoD and all that, they've moved away from it because, again, it has a lot of risk associated with it, with damage to the neurons and all that. And again, I studied the Neuralink in depth because, again, it was an AI system. And you talked of the neurons again. The Neuralink itself, right now it's not considered a tool itself. It's considered it's in the first stage of its infancy. The goal of the Neuralink right now, the testing stage, is to basically collect data. It's to understand the mapping of the brain, how the neurons fire. We don't even understand the neurons themselves. We utilize neurons in computational mathematics, in machine learning as a deep learning algorithm. And one of the things we considered even during the deep learning algorithm, we call it a black box because we fully don't even understand what it is, how it works. But we use it in computational mathematics to predict and do a lot of stuff, but we fully don't even understand how it works. Right. We usually call it a black box. So what this Neuralink will do is not only help with the diseases, but help with computational mathematics. If we can fully understand how the neurons work itself, we can improve all the mathematical models, even all the models used in AI cars and all that, to improve the efficiency of the mathematical models. Because the neurons are basically the basis in some of the machine learning algorithms we use, especially in deep learning. But we fully don't understand how it works. But we use it in predicting a lot of stuff, and it efficiently works. But if we can use the Neuralink to actually understand the neurons itself, we can do a lot of stuff in computational mathematics. And now the goal of the Neuralink itself is just data collection. Right now, the first stage, we're collecting data. We're trying to know how the brain works, how the neurons fires, how all that works. And at the end of the day, once we know and we know how to map the brain, then we can move into, okay, if this part of the brain is not working, how can we place the Neuralink in there to basically help it fire up this side of the neuron? So right now, what Elon is a salesman. He's just trying to put in the future output of what this will be. Well, currently, what this is doing currently is just collecting data, trying to understand how the brain works. And that's what Neuralink currently is, a data collection system, a sensor that just collects data. Then, after we know how all the mapping, how all this works, then we can then, okay, even with that, we can then build an artificial brain system for robots to use to think. So there's a lot of use cases in this, from not only the diseases, but if we know how our brain really works, we can actually build an artificial brain for robots. So there's a lot of use cases for this. And the use case is enormous, especially within AI and all that. It's huge, especially computational mathematics. It's big. So this is just the first case scenario itself.
So, Engineering Cannabis, I have a question. Before I do, I want to acknowledge Dr. T.S.N. Johnson is passed through. Thank you for stopping through, Dr. T. So, Engineering Cannabis, what I hear you saying is that the Neuralink is not just used as a medical device for treating
No,
disease. This is being used for acquisition of information.
the first stage is information mapping. So the
Okay.
goal now is we don't know how the brain works. We don't fully understand the brain mechanism. We don't fully know the mapping of the brain, how it fires, where it fires to, why is certain portion of the brain not functioning. So the first goal of this is mapping, data collection. So again, just look at Neuralink right now as a sensor, just collecting data. It's not going to be used in curing any diseases right now. Right now, we're just using it to collect data and see how, because again, we don't know how the brain works totally. So this is giving us insights on how the brain works, what data we can collect. And then we can then use that data to do a lot of stuff. Again, from computational mathematics to brain understanding, to know understand, okay, if someone loses functions in the leg, what neurons can be fired and what neurons can be stimulated to basically start up that leg again. So this goal right now is data collection. We're collecting a lot of data. It's a sensor right now. Neuralink is just right now a sensor to collect data. And once we collect the data and understand the full understanding of the map on how the brain works, then we can then understand, okay, where can we, if someone has Parkinson's, what buttons can we push to activate that part of the brain? And again, it's also used in computational mathematics. If you can fully understand the brain, we can then improve some of our computational mathematics in predicting certain outcomes, and even utilizing it in AI cars and all that. So the brain in mathematics and computational mathematics, the brain is a huge component in computational mathematics. So with that, we can even improve some of the algorithms we have in mathematics and physics and a lot of stuff. So what Neuralink is, what I'm seeing it is beyond just, again, healthcare. It's in computational mathematics, it's in predictive algorithms, it's in AI, it's in automated vehicles. Again, in most automated vehicles right now, we're using neurons as ways to compute AI in vehicles. And we don't even fully understand that neuron itself. We call it a black box. So if we can fully understand that, we can build the algorithms to think like a human. So the application is way beyond just healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm looking into. It's the application is something else. So again, it's right now we're just in the testing phase itself.
I have to agree with you partially, mostly. I would say about 85 to 95% agree, but there is another component to that because if you don't have any live input, there is nothing for bioinformaticians to do. There's nothing for a person who does the sequencing and programming and the bioinformatics. There's nothing for them to do if they don't have the tissues and the cells that I grow here in my lab. That like the tissues that I would grow and then get RNA and then cDNA in like this type of tube right here. This is cDNA in this little tube. I know it looks like water, but it's cDNA. Okay, so without these samples like this, for instance, these are prostate cancer samples that I grew on plastic or grew from a mouse that or came from a patient, for instance, directly from a patient at autopsy. If we don't have those samples, there's nothing for a bioinformatics specialist to do. So I work at a hospital. You have to have, in research center. So you have to have the raw data first for you to analyze. So there is a healthcare component to that.
No, there's a healthcare.
No, but I'm just saying, like, we can't discount the healthcare component because, like I said, one of the biggest things that's coming on now that's being studied, I have a grant on it myself right now, is aging. And it's not just aging as far as your year of age, your chronological age. It's about biological aging that people are looking at, that people are studying. And I remember BGS and myself had a private discussion about that, about my grant before I submitted it. And I know Dr. Dunbar, you probably don't remember, but that was that grant I was talking about. So aging is very important, and you're going to be looking at older populations of people and comparing them to younger populations of people for different diseases. The bioinformatics is getting more into not just data collection, but cross-referencing data with other software that people are developing. So you are collecting a lot of data. Neuralink would be you're right, it would be collecting a lot of data, but then it's like, how do you apply that data back to me as a scientist? Because I personally, I'm be honest with you guys, there's a guy here, he's a master bioinformatician, I can't even get the word out. He's a master, okay? His whole lab, that's all they do. And we pay a grip for them to analyze our data. I mean, it's ridiculously expensive. But the fact that we send them this data, before I send it to them, I look at it and it's like gibberish. I have no idea what is going on. I cannot figure out I can't make heads or tails of anything. All I know is sample 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so on. And then there's all these numbers. They plug those numbers into some software and get all this information. They plug the numbers into another software and they cross-reference those two data collection from the two software different programs they're using. And then they give me this full layout, like 20-page report about my samples. So then I can take that information and, number one, publish it so nobody else can jump on it. Number two, develop clinical trials for patients. And all my patients are over 60. Number three, target certain markers. That's where I think bioinformatics people don't focus on. When they're looking at the data, they're looking at it from a data collection perspective. When I look at the data, I'm looking for specific clusters of genes and certain gene families that contribute to increase or decrease of a certain function. Because those genes those markers are the ones that I can send to a physical chemist across the street right here, literally across the street. I can send it to a physical chemist and he can develop a drug to target those genes. And then he gives the drug back to me. This is how it works. He gives the drug back to me in a little vial of powder and tells me how to dilute it in ethanol or whatever. I treat my cells with it. You see how this is going? I do the treatment. I collect cDNA do the analysis, send the data to the bioinformatics. You see how it's going back and forth? That's how it works.
Yeah, that's why again I'm a data person too. I'm a data scientist, all that. And
Okay.
usually when I'm doing something, especially within the health field, I always have a specialist behind me. Again, I just look at the data, and again, I do what the bioinformatics. I just use different algorithms and do a correlation analysis and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Then I give it to the specialist who says, okay, what other story can you tell from this data that I'm not? Because again, I'm not the specialist. I'm just the specialist with the data. I understand how to clean the data, create something, and do a lot of stuff in it. But the specialist will then say, okay, this is what I'm seeing from that data. So,
Right.
and also sometimes that's why we always say specialists like you should also have that kind of data background too.
Yeah.
To aid in terms of understanding, because if you have that kind of background, it's again, it's one. You can basically do immediately what the data guys are doing, and you can already get the story beyond we can get the story. So again, healthcare and data and all that, they work hand in hand right now.
Yeah.
Hey,
It's the story itself.
Very true.
I want to address Go Professor's question. He said, is it possible to place these links into, let's say, a pacemaker, if I said that right, that regulates, let's say, pain? So a pacemaker, that's associated with the heart.
Yeah.
But, and speaking of which, I did this stream about 2 weeks ago.
I think the brain will also do that pain. Again, the brain
management too.
Does that pain management also. It will take that data and understanding pain management. And again, if someone has an amputated arm, what kind of pain is that person receiving?
Right.
All these kind of stuff, it's gonna deal with. Again, the brain is the central nervous system, so it's gonna do all that.
Yeah. So this is something associated with the heart. Abbott's trying to roll this one out right now, that they can monitor heart function. They can collect the data on heart function by inserting this device into one of the blood vessels branching off the heart. So I don't know if this will regulate the beating of the heart, but I know that they're figuring out how to collect real-time data in patients right now.
That's the big thing. The goal now is every organ. The goal is how do we predict how every organ will work and should work with a lot of data, even with cells and proteins. And again, I'm the guy who looks at healthcare data and says, okay, how do we predict the heart? When do we predict the heart is going to fail based on these variables? All that. Again, the healthcare part it's still undeniably most important. And the goal right now is data collection. And once we know how to collect that data, the goal now is to predict what will happen if certain variables still remain the same, or what happens to the heart, the liver, the brain. So the goal now is to try to predict all this and see with numbers, quantifiable numbers, what will happen with the aging process too. What will happen to your heart when you age at this rate? When you still eating the bad foods, all that stuff, what will happen with the heart? These variables are then accounted into a model, and the model then predicts, oh, your heart will fail at the age of this if you continue doing this. So that is what the goal is, just to collect that data. And also it's going to depend on race. It's going to depend on gender. It's going to depend on all these factors, environmental factors, where you live, what you're doing, toxins, all this data is then aggregated into a model to then say what happens to your heart, liver, brain, and all that.
Where have you been all my life, Mr. Engineering Cannabis? Because you must be do you have a camera in my lab spying on us?
No, I do this too. I do this too. This is what I do on
you spying in my lab. I see you looking in my lab. That's exactly what the diet and stuff. That's my second project. So the first project is on aging, biologic aging, and dealing with the methylation and changes in epigenetic signaling and epigenetic modifications like methylation, acetylation, things like that. And so the second project, and that's in liver metastasis, prostate cancer cells that metastasize or move to the liver, right? The second project is dealing with cholesterol and how it can reprogram prostate cancer cells to be more transformative, how it makes them literally physically transform and make them more likely to move to the bone and the liver. And so cholesterol, of course, that's just a euphemism for high fat diet, or AKA American diet. And so that is funny how you you brought that up, because that is one of the that, I mean, I'm getting paid off of that because that's another grant I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're trying to right now, we just finished two experiments. One was in the mice. They had normal diet, and then we gave them normal diet for 6 weeks. We gave them high fat diet for 6 weeks. And then we turned around and gave them normal diet for another 6 weeks. So these are old mice too, right? So what we find is that if they've been on high fat diet, and we're trying to figure this out, like figure out what's going on. But if they've been on high fat diet for a long time, and 6 weeks is a long time for mice, and then you try to put them back on a regular diet, like, make them go to Weight Watchers or something, or Jenny Craig, it doesn't work, because the genetics are locked in due to the high fat diet. So when I say locked in, I mean that I did a program with a stream with Nameless about this, epigenetic modifications and things like that. So epigenetics is something that is a huge field right now. A lot of RNA splicing, a lot of RNA mutations and RNA binding motifs and proteins are involved. My first project was on that. So now I'm incorporating those splicing events and mutations into more real life stuff with obesity. And of course, we say obesity, you're talking about health disparities within the Black American community. We're also seeing increases, at least in the United States, with the Asian American community with obesity and diabetes. Indians from India have very high numbers of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, hyperglycemia, cholesterolemia, like all kinds of stuff where they have high cholesterol. That is important to note, because these types of pathologies or these diseases will go to metabolic syndrome. And that's how bioinformatics can come in, because you can target those genes, and then it, like I said before, it works as a cycle where we can start developing, I'm not just developing drugs. Like, they need to be things that actually rid the body of these issues, and in a way that doesn't that's not toxic. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. I'm gonna go for a little bit longer. I want to get Chaos in. He's been patiently waiting here. Chaos, what's going on? Chaos Rain, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep.
Well, that's good. Dunbar and Nicole Ali and the other gentleman, I'm not sure who he is.
Engineering Cannabis.
Even Mr. Canvas. Okay. Yes, man. The future is here, and it's now. It's time to get the chips, like everybody was such afraid of. The 666. One time I heard them talk about it, you're gonna get it in your arm. You're gonna get it in your leg. Hell, you might get it in your neck. Now they say you might get it in the head. And I tell people many times, with all these unique gizmos and devices, how are they going to power it? They need a carrier. They need a conduit. You are the best conduit. So why not put the chip in your head, So that way you could able to move the machines and, tell the door to open with your hand and stuff. That's where we're at now. Now, mind you, Dr. Dunbar, do streams like this. It kind of brings the spookism and the fear of a lot of people. You get me? And so, oh, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I say, but what are you gonna do to stop it? Now, this is only trials for people that's disabled and might be paralyzed or have brain problems. But we can go even further. You know? So I tell people many times, they're not always when we see new innovation and technology, they're not always focused on us. They focus on the ones that's coming out the womb, or that's children, or young people. This is for them. This is something that they're gonna be more accustomed to, that they already entrenched into the technology. Hell, Nicole, you just had a daughter. Even I'm not sure how old she is now, but you could give her the device and she knows what to do with it immediately. How so? Because this is their time. These are the technical age children.
Yeah.
It is like the cyberpunk of the present and what will be in 50 years. Or I can say 25 years, being loosely. So, like I said, this is very new information. What's on this site? Information that's been talked about, but now they said that now in the stage of trial, production, and something I should talk about on my little channel eventually. But this is very insightful information, and I want people to embrace the change, embrace technology. Do not run away with it. Don't get scared. You must embrace it. Master it. Hell, we built so many things. This is not something new. You get me? The ones that fear for change and growth are surely going to be behind and eventually perish if not careful.
Yeah,
that's how.
Well, Cass, I think one of the something important engineering cannabis contributed is that they're already using this for data collection. So there are opportunities in that right now. In terms of data collection, and Nicole has talked about the importance of that. But I agree with you. I think that before this comes online, well, when this comes online on a large scale, I think we'll just see the beginnings of it. I agree.
Mm-hmm. And think about it, Dr. Mark. I remember yesterday when Mark Zuckerberg did like a little not announcement, but like a little. It's like a short series and documentary of what we call the metaverse. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people we're stepping from regular realms to 3-dimensionals, to the virtual realm. You get me? These are little soft steps we are taking as things truly evolve. The internet is going to move at a super top speed, and things have to move as fast as well. So the things that we always say that are running so slow, and what we don't have the access, we have it now and at a more higher rate. So
okay,
yeah.
It's only expected to happen. So it only happens like that because it has to happen like that. If you have and anybody who wants to move slow, they get pushed out of the way. That's just how it is.
I'm just going to say something about Nicole before I hop off. Nicole, your research is, again, some of the stuff everybody's looking for, the data, because again, in order to make predictions, again, I'm the kind of person who designs sensors to try to monitor this kind of stuff. Again, one of the biggest problems again was heart conditions, metabolic rates, all that is some of this data I use in my models. And with your research, the good thing about your type of research is it helps improve my efficiency in terms of the model, in terms of predicting effectively how the heart works. So most of your data, you utilize it in different, but I can utilize most of your data to improve some of the models in terms of prediction. Okay, metabolic rates, all that accounts for, again, heart disease, not only heart disease, brain functions and all that. It can be used in terms of our models to say how can that effectively predict how the heart will function. And also, again, it also helps in the solution piece. If those variables changes, can improve the heart conditions too. So it can help in the negative and the positive. So all your research and the data itself, it's invaluable. Again,
Mhm.
we are trying. A lot of guys in the data sectors are trying to just get that kind of data itself, because that's the important piece of the puzzle in terms of predictive analysis and all that, is the
Mhm.
good incisive data you and everybody in the healthcare and lab settings are actually doing right now.
Yeah,
So
you're right, because if you can predict something, you can prevent it, right?
yes,
You can work to prevent it, and that has not been a big in industry, and there has not been a big push for prevention. But
it's no,
when you're talking about health disparities, now it has, and with bioinformatics, now it has become a
it's a
big
big push now,
yeah.
because
Now they're pushing it.
I'm seeing UCLA hospitals from UCLA,
Yeah,
USC asking
yeah.
people to look at predictive analysis in terms of heart,
Right.
kidney disease, brain function. All this is data collection, so we can predict. And if we can
Hmm.
predict it, we can then formulate those variables to know how to prevent it, or even sometimes how to slow it down. And
Right.
that
Right.
is what I've been working on in the healthcare side too. So I'm in everywhere. So but this is the kind of stuff I would work on a daily basis. But again, the data is beautiful and everything in there. So thanks again. And
Engineering cannabis.
yeah,
Speaking of jumping off, I think I'm gonna wrap up.
Okay.
So if you guys want to get last words or statements in, yeah, please go for it.
Yeah, I just want to thank you once again for having the stream. Sorry, I'm writing notes.
That's okay.
And I really appreciate your work and everything that you're doing. I support you. Whenever you have a stream like this, I may not make it, but I try my best to watch the playbacks if I can. Um, I really do think that there is a lack of science discussions, like you say, big words. We have to have these science and technology discussions, because I'm seeing, like, I've been wanting to see this, is having more Black men in this field. And so in my lab within the past year, we have 2 Black men here. And I'm like, oh, hey, like, this is amazing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm the only Black woman in my lab, but there are a lot of Black women within research and science. Black men are the ones that are left behind. Actually, it's Black men. You people might get mad at me, but it's Black men number 1 and white women number 2 that are left behind. But I ain't worried about them. They got their own liberal arts stuff and all the things they do, and a lot of them are PIs, so whatever. But Black men, not only as researchers, but as PIs and in principal investigators, meaning they run their own lab, and as well as having Black men in regulatory sciences, such as yourself, where you're actually inspecting and certifying people's data. That is extremely important, because there's a lot of fraud, and there's a lot of plagiarism, and there's a lot of scientific integrity that is lacking. And so when you have a regulatory mechanism there, and it looks like those people look like us, that is very important. People who are reviewing grants, people that are reviewing patent applications, we need more of us in those positions. So that's why I push so hard for us to have more Black men in these positions. And that's just what I'll leave it with. Once again, thank you, Dr. Dunbar,
Well,
everybody in the chat, everybody on the panel. Y'all be good. And
Nicole,
I'll wait.
hold on. Before you go, I appreciate you, and my door is always open for you to come back and talk about what's happening on your end. And I just want to say that I appreciate what you just said, because well, sometimes you're working and you get so involved in the day-to-day and the office politics and the office happenings that you don't zoom out and realize the importance of what you're doing. So I appreciate what you just said.
Yeah, it's extremely important. No problem. Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. And anytime we want to come back and talk shop, as our new staff says, you're always welcome.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right, thank you,
I'm about to hop
Nicole.
off, y'all. Bye, y'all.
Take care.
hey, take care.
All right, everyone. Well, on that note, I want to get out and, they say health is wealth. So I want to get out and make sure my body's moving. So I'm not sitting here in front of a computer all day long. So I'm going to get out and try to get some exercise and break a sweat. So thank you to everyone who watched the stream. And thank you to those of you who donated. If you're watching on the playback and you want to donate, my Cash App and PayPal are below in the description box. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscription button and hit the notification bell. I know that a lot of folks tell me that when I go live, they don't get the notifications. So there are these things that YouTube does. But I think I'm close to 1,200 subs here. I think I need 14 more. So if you're new to the channel, if the algorithm brought you here, please hit that subscribe button. So with that, I will conclude the stream. Everyone enjoy the rest of your Saturday and your weekend. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.